All right, so we're going to begin with trying to solve these aggregate demand, aggregate supply problems. So first thing you're going to want to notice is that you have one of each graph, and you only really want to work shifting each graph once. So we begin with having this increase in the price level. So we notice that if the price level increases, then overall everyone needs to spend more money, right? So you notice that the money demand is going to increase, and you just shift this money demand upwards. Money demand increases, you notice that the interest rate has also increased to R1. So when the money demand increases, interest rate increases. And just like when we're doing with monetary policy, what we have is that the planned investment and the autonomous consumption both increase. Not both increase, decrease. And so when you have this decrease in the planned investment and autonomous consumption, you end up having a decrease in the aggregate expenditures. So you shift this over here, and you notice Y is here. So now aggregate expenditures can affect one of these lines here. So remember, aggregate expenditures is sum total of all spending in the economy. So if we decrease our sum total spending, we'll end up decreasing our aggregate demand. So let me see if I can get this right. So if I just decrease aggregate demand here, and so just about. So our Y becomes here. So you notice that the price has, the output has gone down, and you'll also notice that the price has also gone down. So to sum up, a price level increase leads to an interest rate increase, a price decrease, and an output decrease. All right, so we've summed up here with this overall general change in the money demand ends up leading to an increase in the interest rate, and then a decrease in the prices and a decrease in the output. So what happens in the economy when we have a price level that overall is decreasing? Well, in this case, the money demand is going to decrease. And so when our money demand decreases, we shift this over here, and we'll notice that the interest rate has gone down. We'll call this R2, right? And when the interest rate goes down, this is when our planned investment and autonomous consumption increase, which means that overall the aggregate expenditures will increase. So we'll just shift this part upwards. And so when you do that, you notice that the overall aggregate demand is also going to increase here, which means that you have this change in price and you have this change in Y. And so when aggregate expenditures increases, aggregate demand increases as well, which means that the price and output will increase. So to sum up, a general level price decrease will lead to a short run decrease in the interest rate, leading to an increase in the price and an increase in the output. All right, so this next question has to do with the expansionary monetary policy. So when we're pursuing expansionary monetary policy, you have to remember, is the Federal Reserve buying bonds or selling bonds? When we're doing expansionary monetary policy, remember that we're buying bonds. So when we do expansionary monetary policy, we buy bonds, meaning that the money supply is going to increase. And so when you have the money supply increase, you just shift this to the right. So we'll call this money supply 2. And once again, you can notice that the interest rate is going to decrease. So money supply increase leads to a decrease in the interest rate. A decrease in interest rate leads to an increase in the planned investment and autonomous consumption. Overall, that's going to lead to an increase in the aggregate expenditures. And so once again, when the aggregate expenditure increases, the aggregate demand moves along with that, right? So we end up having this aggregate demand that's over here. And you will see that the output has gone to the right and the price has increased. So price is increased, output's increased. So to sum up, when you pursue expansionary monetary policy, the interest rate is going to decrease, leading to more spending in the economy, leading to more spending, and leading more output. Now, on the other hand, when we have contractionary monetary policy, this is when we sell bonds, right? So, sell bonds. So overall, this means that the money supply is going to decrease. Money supply 3. Notice here, this is R2. And so the interest rate is going to increase, leading to a decrease in the planned investment and autonomous consumption, overall leading to a decrease in the aggregate expenditures. And so what we have is an aggregate supply that's down here, aggregate demand that's down here. Notice, once again, aggregate demand is going to decrease, so price is going to decrease, and output is going to decrease. And so when you sell bonds, when you try to pull back the economy, when the Federal Reserve pursues contractionary monetary policy, you'll notice that the interest rates are going to go up, meaning that people will spend less and will produce less. All right, so this third question has to do with expansionary fiscal policy and contractionary fiscal policy. So we all know that expansionary fiscal policy has to deal with an increase in the government spending or a decrease in the taxes. Overall, this will lead to an increase in the aggregate expenditure. So we know that aggregate expenditure is going to increase. This is the result or the definition of an expansionary fiscal policy. And we already know that when you increase the aggregate expenditures, you end up having an increase in the aggregate demand. And you'll see that overall, outputs have increased and prices have increased. So price up, output up. Now, overall, if the economy has higher prices, what's going to happen to the money demand? So in this case, money demand is going to increase. Why? Because overall, the economy is doing pretty well and everyone wants to spend money, things are becoming more expensive, so the money demand is going to increase. So money demand is up, and then interest rate is up. So you notice that if the the government decides to expand the economy or increase how much we spend, prices are going to increase, and then we're going to increase our production. So when we try to expand the economy, there's some inflationary pressure here. This price is trying to go up. And because of that, interest rates tend to go up too. Remember, this is all just in the short run. You only need to do with one shift on each graph, and then that's all you need to do. And so as a result of this policy, we have a price increase, an output increase, and an interest rate increase. However, on the other hand, let's say we're trying to pull back spending, pull back our economy, our contractionary. Well, when we do contractionary, this is when the government decreases our spending or increases our taxes. And this will lead to an overall decrease in the aggregate expenditures. And so we already know this leads to a decrease in the aggregate demand. So over here, aggregate demand, you notice that the prices is going to decrease and the output is going to decrease. So prices are down, output is down. So when the government pulls back their spending or increases taxes, our spending is down and the overall aggregate demand is down. And overall, you'll notice that the prices are down, so just the opposite, we'll have this money demand go down. And so this is our interest rate. And so the interest rate is going to go down. So when the government pulls back their spending, our spending goes down, so aggregate demand goes down, prices go down, output goes down, interest rates go down. So overall, this is the effect of these types of fiscal policy. Once again, only one shift on each graph, and that's all we need to worry about. All right, so this next question is a little bit different. So think about what it takes to make anything in the economy. And so let's talk about this. The question says workers are more efficient or workers are less efficient. If workers are more efficient, what's going to happen, or which graph should we target? if workers are more efficient, this doesn't really have anything to do with the money market. It doesn't have really do with anything spending. Workers, this is talking about the labor inputs. And labor inputs are all about supply. In this case, the aggregate supply. And so if overall our workers are just like more efficient. So in the past they could do one shoe an hour, now they can make 2 shoes an hour. Basically this means that we can produce more in our economy. So when our workers are more efficient, the aggregate supply is going to increase. And so when we have this aggregate supply, we have this here. This aggregate supply is going to increase. You notice that the price is going to go down, but output is going to go to the right. And so you have to think, how does this going to affect the economy? This is very different because now you notice that you have 2 parts here. You don't know whether it should go up or down. And so you have to really think, how will this affect the economy? Well, you notice that you have this increase in the output, right? And so remember that if you increase the output, you're also gonna have to end up increasing this aggregate expenditures line here. And so you end up having aggregate expenditures to increase, right? Because we're moving along that aggregate demand line. And so you notice that the overall aggregate demand has increased, like here. And then at the same time, you notice once again with this price has gone down, but the output has gone up. So we did this output one, right? It affected the aggregate expenditures. But how does the price affect any of these things? You notice that because you have this decrease in the price, you have a money demand decrease. And we already know that that leads to a decrease in the interest rate. So overall, you'll notice that when our workers become more efficient, the economy is doing pretty well. Our prices have gone down, our output has gone up, and interest rates have gone down. So overall, this aggregate supply shift is pretty much net positive. You have this prices going down, things are cheaper for everyone, people will have more output, there's more income in the economy, and interest rates have gone down. So this is really, really good. However, on the other hand, let's talk about if our aggregate supply is doing the opposite, if it's going to decrease instead when our workers become less efficient. And so if we have this aggregate supply decrease, you notice that it's going to shift over here. Aggregate supply, this is price up, output back. So price is going to go up, output is going to go down. And so we're going to have a decrease in the aggregate expenditures, right? And then notice this price increase. This is going to have a money demand increase, which leads to an overall increase in the interest rate. So now the question has to deal with, should we pursue Dove or Hawk policy? This is a different question. And so remember, Dove policy is a very lenient policy. It's very friendly. Hawk policy, on the other hand, is a very aggressive policy. So you have to notice that what does this mean in the economy? Your output has gone down. This means that you have unemployment in the economy. So output down equals to unemployment. And on the other hand, you notice that you have this high inflationary pressure. Price has gone up, so high prices. And so think about this. What can the Federal Reserve do, or what can the government do? If we target this unemployment, then overall you notice that we can either increase this aggregate demand or decrease this aggregate demand. And so if you increase the aggregate demand, if we move this over here, we can bring output back to normal, right? And so, but that leads to even higher prices. Notice here, right? If we bring back to Y naught, then prices are all the way up here. However, if we pull back, if we try to lower the prices, notice that the unemployment has gone way, way down. So you have 2 choices, of Dove policy or Hawk policy. Either or isn't better. It depends on the opinion of the people pushing the policy. However, just know that Dove policy targets unemployment, and then Hawk policy tolerates or is related to the high prices. And so whether or not you pursue dove or hawk policy depends on whether you believe high prices are more damaging to the economy or high unemployment is more damaging to the economy. Let's work on this final question. And then you can put your questions in the comment section below. And then let's deal this. So this is a more application-based question. So everything you've done so far is just trying to figure out what is happening to the economy. How can we do this, right? And so this one says the stock market crashes in 2020. And you notice this is pretty relevant right now. But overall, we've done this similar question. I believe that when the stock market crashes, if you have your wealth invested in your stock markets, this means that your overall wealth is going to decrease. When your wealth decreases, then this means that your autonomous consumption is going to decrease. Stock market crashes also have to do with things like consumer confidence and overall how businesses plan to do things. And so overall, you notice that this stock market crash is a very recessionary event. And overall, this autonomous consumption is going to go down. So we have our aggregate expenditure is going to go down. So we just shift this back, AE. And once again, we already know that if AE goes down, AD goes down, right? And so AD goes down, blah, 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 prices go down, output goes down, right? This is all stuff we've seen before, or hopefully you've seen by now. However, the question now is that assuming that we were originally at full employment. So we're saying this right here is Y bar, and we are now at Y. So the goal is to get back to Y bar. And so since we've lowered aggregate expenditures, we have to increase our aggregate expenditures. I also totally forgot that this price here has decreased. So we have this money demand decrease. So money demand are down. Okay, sorry about that. So let's look at this. So we have a general price decrease, a general output decrease. Interest rates have gone down. So how can we get the economy back to full employment? Well, first off, we have to increase our output, right? So this is an expansionary procedure. So we're looking at expansionary. And so in class, we've learned two ways where we can do things. We can either do things as fiscal or monetary. Fiscal policy is pretty simple. If we were to just I'll use green for fiscal. So if we use fiscal policy, we're just going to increase the aggregate expenditures, right? And so if we increase the aggregate expenditures, this goes back, aggregate demand goes back, and then money demand is going to go back. So we just push it all back. However, on the other hand, let's talk about a monetary policy. So monetary policy, we'll do this in red. This is when we increase the money supply. Money supply is going to increase, shift to the right. So money supply is going to increase. Interest rates are going to go down, which should be over here. So even further, when interest rates go down, planned investment and autonomous consumption go up, aggregate expenditures are going to increase. This pushes this back up. And then overall, you have this push back for the aggregate demand. Aggregate demand is going to go back. And so overall, you have your prices are going to go back to normal, outputs are going to go back to Y bar, and this is overall how you fix the economy. So essentially you have two options. You can do expansionary fiscal policy or expansionary monetary policy. Both steps work, but you should know why we would choose one over the other. So please look over your notes. At this time, if you have any questions, put your comments in the section, questions in the comments below. At the same time, if you haven't signed in using the online links, please do so. I apologize for any inconvenience this whole section has had. It's been a very trying time for us all. So please, thank you all for coming. Good luck on your finals.